Hi, rock solid here. Geologist, botanist, ecologist, and economy-sized detective. Acme needed a good guide who was in tune with nature, so I volunteered for the job. Now let's hike around this intriguing little piece of our planet. Here's Elephant Rock, one of the red rock hills that surround Sedona. It changes color all day, reflecting different shades as the sun moves across the sky. I've spent whole days watching these hills, when I wasn't tracking a crook, of course. Most of the USA's copper comes from the red Arizona earth, much of it removed by strip mining. Companies dig huge pits to get at the ore, stripping the surface from miles and miles of delicate desert. If mining has to be done, I think it should be done in a more earth-friendly way. A little bit of extra effort can go a long way towards saving the environment. Sycamore and pine trees cling to the hills around Sedona, but Arizona has an official state tree that's straight out of the high desert, the saguaro cactus. It's tall, strong, prickly, and thrives in harsh conditions, a lot like me. Many Arizona landmarks have ancient names from native tribal languages, but this one has a more contemporary handle. Since it looks like the head of a particularly famous dog, folks around here call it Snoopy Rock. If you're wondering why Sedona's hills are red, the answer is simple. They're full of red minerals like copper and iron. You might think iron is black, but remember what happens when it gets wet. Rust. This is one of the driest states in America, but the government has spent billions of dollars to pipe water from the Colorado River into central Arizona, turning dry desert into farmland. People have a lot of different opinions about whether this type of irrigation is a good or bad thing to do. Just between you and me, I prefer the desert dry. Bye-bye. Ow! Things are always looking sunny here in California. There's lots to see in Yosemite, so let's start a tour. From the first time John Muir saw this beautiful valley in 1868, he dedicated himself to protecting it. 22 years later, Yosemite became a national park because of Muir's work. Then he started the Sierra Club. Talk about a fellow with a lot of positive energy. Most people who tour Yosemite do it by car. The 200 miles of road are nice, but if you really want to see the place, hike the nature trails. They cover 3 times as much area as the roads, and no one ever gets a flat tire. For a great view of the whole Yosemite Valley, climb up there to the top of Glacier Point. It's the best panorama in all of California. 360 degrees of wow. Of Yosemite's many mountains, this might be the most famous, Half Dome. Long ago it was pointy, but Ice Age glaciers sanded it down and rounded it off. Of course, the weather still changes the mountains a little bit every day through erosion. Geology might move slowly, but it never stops. Yosemite covers a huge hunk of the Sierra Nevadas, from its 13,000-foot peaks to its glacial valley, with giant sequoia trees, tiny ferns, rivers, waterfalls, cliffs, and 429 lakes in between. Someday I'll see all 1,200 square miles of it, but not this time around. The water in Yosemite Falls does exactly what its name says. It falls. 2,500 feet to be exact. It makes such a mist that even standing 50 feet away, you'll get soaked. But it's worth getting wet to see beauty like that. Bye-bye. Let's stroll along Idaho's Snake River Plain, and I'll show you the sights. Here in Idaho, folks know a good potato when they see one, because they see a lot of them. In fact, they grow more potatoes here than in any other state. And if you get tired of spuds, try the local peas, beets, and grains. You need to be well fed when you're fighting crime. There are really two different Idahos. The South, with its farms, cities, and big Mormon population, is a lot like Utah. The North, on the other hand, is more like Montana, rugged, mountainous, sparsely populated, and independent. But I don't take sides. I think they're both quite spectacular. That's the Sawtooth Range off in the distance, part of the Rockies. Idaho has lots of mountains, so lots of skiers vacation here. Me, I'd rather climb up a mountain than slide down. We're standing on Idaho's Snake River Plain. Even though Idaho is huge, most of its people live within 100 miles of this river. It's a great place to farm. The water is plentiful, the soil is great, and the view isn't bad either. Bye-bye! They call this part of Montana Many Glaciers because, well, because it has many glaciers. Let's look around. This particular part of Montana is right atop the Continental Divide. All the rivers and streams east of here flow toward the Atlantic Ocean, and those west of here flow to the Pacific. In other words, if you're looking for the middle, you're standing on it. In Montana, you won't find better lodgings than this. Many Glacier Hotel in Glacier National Park. 1,000 miles of hiking trails start and end here at this cozy spot. And every night you can catch a lecture from a naturalist or ranger. I've done a few myself. The Ice Age is over, but it's not dead here in Glacier National Park. Over 50 small glaciers dot the park, permanent ice sheets inching their way over the land. They're shrinking as the Earth gets slowly warmer, but a couple of cool years will turn them around. Just wait and see. You're looking at Grinnell Point, named for George Grinnell, one of my heroes. He founded the Audubon Society back in the 19th century. We society members work to preserve wild animal habitats all over the world. It's never too early to join, by the way. This part of the astounding Montana landscape was carved by glaciers, huge moving sheets of ice that grew and retreated during the Pleistocene age. They slowly carved lakes, valleys, and peaks from the limestone, siltstone, mudstone, and every other stone in their way. Glaciers are slow, but watch out, they're strong. Bye-bye! Ow! We'll start our Oregon exploration here in Washington Park, just outside Portland. Come on, let's look at the landscape. 150 years ago, there was no city here at all, just wilderness. Then the Oregon Trail brought settlers from the east. They were looking for a place with more opportunity. And unlike Carmen's crooks, they were willing to work hard for their fortunes. Here's what makes Washington Park smell so good. The International Rose Test Gardens. You're looking at 10,000 rose bushes of 400 different varieties. And if you get here in June, you'll see them all bloom at once. It's worth the trip. It's not summer in Portland without a show at the Washington Park Amphitheater. Oregonians love outdoor theater. In the mountains south of here, the Ashland Shakespeare Festival has 4 stages full of drama and comedy. Fine culture in the midst of beautiful nature. It's a perfect combination, if you ask me. For a city, Portland isn't so bad. Maybe it's all the green grass and trees. I'm even rather fond of the rainy weather. If you want to stay dry in Oregon, you have to head east to the arid Columbia Plateau. Here on the western side of the state, wet is what you get. Oregon harvests more lumber than any other state, and that's why the World Forestry Center is here. Pine forests cover half the state, and preservationists like me make sure that the wood is carefully harvested, not needlessly stripped. You're looking at my favorite thing about Portland, its view of Mount Hood, Oregon's highest mountain. I'm quite fond of snow-capped volcanic peaks, and they don't come much nicer than this one. Majestic, isn't it? Bye-bye! Here we are in Utah, Zion National Park to be exact. Ready for a nature walk? If you're very quiet, I'll introduce you to some of my wild friends who live here in Zion. The bobcats, mountain lions, coyotes, bighorn sheep, and their other untamed associates. Believe it or not, these animals are actually rather shy. But considering how some people treat them, I don't blame them for avoiding us humans. Here's Zion Lodge, the only place in Zion National Park where you can rent overnight accommodations. Clarence Underwood designed it back in the 1920s. Most man-made buildings tend to clash in natural settings, but this one, designed with nature in mind, fits in quite nicely. Long before Zion was a canyon, it was a swamp. Then the weather got drier, and layers of sand blew in and mixed with the mud and minerals. Then the shifting earth raised up all those caked layers of sand and dried mud thousands of feet above sea level. Finally, the Virgin River started carving it away, little by little, till it looked like this. Pretty cool, huh? I could go on all day about the geology. Watch your step while you're walking here. The surrounding land is made of sedimentary rock, which could probably also be called sandimentary rock, since it contains lots and lots of tightly layered sand. Either way, one thing's for sure. Sandy rock is slippery rock. I've taken a few spills in this park, and I'd hate to see you do the same. Geologist Leo Snow first surveyed this place for the U.S. government back in 1908, and he made sure to note how beautiful it was. The following year, President Taft made it into a national monument, and 10 years later, Congress declared it a national park. Some things are definitely worth preserving in their natural state. Bye-bye! Wyoming is wonderful, especially Grand Teton National Park. The mountains await us, so let's start our trek. One of my favorite things about this place is the people, because there aren't very many. In fact, even though it's the 9th largest state in area, Wyoming has a smaller population than any other U.S. state. With so few people around, the beauty of nature really gets a chance to shine. Of all the different ranges in the Rocky Mountain system, the Tetons are the youngest. That's part of the reason they're so tall, jagged, and angular. The wind and weather hasn't had time to wear them down yet, in a process called erosion. In a few million years, they'll be rounder, like me. Wyoming has lots of amazing scenery, but nothing tops the Teton Range. Those 13,000-foot peaks are amazing from every angle, and they hide a wealth of coal and other minerals. Speaking as a highly trained geologist, I can describe the Tetons with one highly technical word: wow! Wyoming isn't all mountains. In its flatter parts, ranchers raise cattle and sheep. But the land is rugged, and the grass is thin, so it takes about 50 acres just to feed one cow. If you were a cowboy here, you'd ride lots of miles rounding up your herd. Bye-bye! Ow! Here we are in Kansas, in quite a lovely spot, the Spring Hill Prairie Reserve. Let's get started. The Kansas prairie isn't as dramatic looking as some spots in the USA, but it's an important ecosystem, and it's almost extinct. That's why Spring Hill will soon be designated a national park, because our natural history is worth saving. If you think all grass is the same, look more closely at the prairie. There's blue stem grass, switchgrass, Indian grass, all different kinds. According to Native American healers, each grass has a different medicinal quality, and they ought to know. They've been here a lot longer than you or I. For the last 100 years, Kansas has been covered with wheat fields. But before that, it was almost all prairie, rolling fields of tall grass. That grass fed millions of buffalo. But now both the buffalo and the grass are almost gone. Prairie preserves like this one at Spring Hill are the last refuge for plant and animal alike, so treat them kindly. Spring Hill used to be a rich man's ranch. You can tell by this house. Stephen Jones built this stone mansion out in the prairie lands after he made his fortune in banking. Most of Kansas has rich, deep soil, while here at Spring Hill it's rich but shallow, too shallow to plow in some places. So while the rest of the state turned into wheat fields, a little piece of prairie survived here, a link with the natural past. Just as wheat replaced the wild grass in Kansas, farm animals like cattle and sheep replaced the original wild animals. Without preserves like this one, there'd be no place for native prairie animals like buffalo, deer, foxes, raccoons, coyotes. The list goes on. Bye-bye! Where in the world but in Wisconsin would you find a place like this? Nowhere, that's where. Let's explore the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. There's the Wisconsin state fish, a type of northern pike called the muskellunge. Of course, that's not a real muskie. It's a 4-story building shaped like one, with an observation deck in its mouth. If that were real, it would be swimming in a freshwater lake, and it would be slightly smaller. No, you're not seeing things. That's a really big bass made out of fiberglass. Wisconsin's fishermen love nothing more than to sit in bass boats on lakes up north and troll for these wide-mouthed babies. They prefer the non-synthetic type, of course. I'm told fiberglass isn't very tasty. All this Wisconsin fishing lore could make a great saying. Give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach him to fish, feed him for life. Sometimes I add a third line. Steal a man's fish, and Acme will reel you in. You don't find huge fish statues everywhere in Wisconsin, just here in Hayward at the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. 100,000 people a year see these exhibits. Mounted trophy fish, big outboard motors, even hooks that have been pulled out of fishermen. I bet you didn't know fishing could be so exciting. Bye-bye!